Welcome to another episode of the Creator Toolbox. This is the show all about the nuts and bolts behind your creator business. I'm Colin Gray from thepodcasthost.com, joined by Jacob. As always, how are you getting on, Jacob?
Really good. Yeah, it's a sunny day in Scotland for the first time in weeks, so I'm happy. So I've got a nice room. You can see Edinburgh Castle.
Yeah, if you're watching on the video, you can see the nice setting. Jacob's in a jealousy-inducing place with Edinburgh Castle right behind him. But if not, you should just imagine a blue sky, which I know it's hard to imagine in Scotland, but it happens every now and again. How are you getting on this week, Jacob?
Good. It's been a busy one. Gotten a lot of things out the door. Got our new blog live for the Creator Toolbox, which was really exciting.
Let's get into that in a wee while, certainly.
We tests. Yeah. What about you?
Same, actually. Quite a bit of creating, actually. A good bit of writing, some landing page stuff. Do you know, I've had a good fun actually doing something around, I did something which we talked about a little bit around our, I don't know, strengths and weaknesses. Like, it's almost back to an old, if you're out there listening, you've ever worked in a big corporation or anything like that and done any consultancy around, like, you might have heard such a thing as a SWOT analysis. Which is like such a, it's just a funny thing, isn't it? I was going to say such an old fashioned thing. It's not at all, really. It's the kind of thing that us as creators or alternative types of businesses think that is completely irrelevant. Like, it's just something that corporates do to waste time. But it's actually like those kind of things, they just work. So yeah, I went through like, where are we actually strong right now with our content? Where are we weak? What are the opportunities? What are the threats? That's what SWOT stands for. And it was really interesting, actually. It brought out a whole bunch of stuff. And it'd be good to share some of that in the coming weeks on here on the Creator Toolbox. But a big part of it was around content. Actually, the Creator Toolbox blog as well. It's one of our weaknesses is that we are really reliant on just one channel of content right now for marketing, for a lot of what we do. And for better or worse, Google is great at sending traffic sometimes and then just decides they don't like you the next day and stuff like that. And they come back and forth. And we've survived the whole helpful content update Armageddon over the last 12 months a lot better than most. But it's still scary to see like drops in traffic of 10, 15, even 20% that sometimes come back, sometimes don't. And it's crazy. It's up and down. So yes, that's a big part of this, isn't it?
I mean, there's people with blogs similar size to ours that practically overnight went from a few 100,000 visits a month to just nothing, hundreds or low thousands, which is effectively 95% of their income. Really scary.
Full sites closed down, and ones that have, you know, the whole idea is for them to surface, well, their claim was it would surface more helpful content, genuine helpful content. And so many of the sites that you see the case studies around that's all they've been doing. It's just like us, like all you do is try and write good stuff that helps people out, and it's still targeted. But anyway, enough about that. There's plenty of that out there. Yeah, the point being that it was really worthwhile doing it, like really spending half a day thinking about what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses in our content, in our company, in our team, all that kind of stuff. And that was one of the biggest things that stood out. So I've got a bunch of plans around tackling some of those weaknesses and really leaning into some of those strengths as well. But the blog's a big part of it. So yeah, why don't you tell us? It's good to jump into this one first. What is the Creator Toolbox blog?
Well, blog for the podcast, similar sort of topics, tools, workflows, mindsets for your creator business. Right, kind of from when we started this podcast, we talked about having a blog. Just got a bunch of episodes out, figured out the format, figured out more or less what it is that we're going to speak about. And then, we decided that we're kind of going to do it. And when did we start building the blog? Maybe like a month and a half ago. Started writing some posts to get on it and kind of didn't talk about it or publish it in very many places. Popped it into a few newsletters, somewhere near the bottom, just to gauge. Got that live now. We've got a few tool reviews on there. We've got a couple of workflows.
The idea really is to complement this, isn't it? It's talk about the same types of subjects, but actually stuff that makes more sense written down. Or it's maybe even just complementary, isn't it? As in, we'll talk about a subject, but actually it's good to see the summary of how it's done, be able to read through something that revises it. And actually, a big part of it, I always talk about with podcasts, like one of the things that people miss in podcast growth more than anything else is text search. Like we've just moaned about Google, but it is still, and it will continue to be for a long time, even if Google itself dies off, even if so much search goes towards AI is still searching text content and surfacing that as well. So it's just another place to be found if we're answering good questions.
100%. And there's some things that we'll talk about on the podcast that we just can't go into every minute detail. One, because sometimes you actually need to sit down and write down to get all of the detail out of your head. And that detail is not always available, and it just wouldn't make great content. So it means we can expand on things, and it means that, like you say, we can rank for the same kind of things that we're talking about on the podcast. People find us on Google, and and we'll have our podcast episodes embedded on the website. We'll have links to the podcast as well. It'll help us build a bit of search presence, but it'll also help us grow the podcast as well, which is cool.
Yeah. I'm quite excited actually about experimenting with some more tactics around how to make a podcast really useful on the web, because there's tools out there. Probably talked about a few of them. We could get into more detail in future, but like Podpage, really good tool. We know Brendan that makes it really well. And there's so many great tools in there. It makes a site really simply and easily for a podcast. And it is great for any general podcast, but equally you can benefit a lot from like custom tools just for your approach and the types of things you talk about. And if you have the capacity to develop a site and test out different things and see, does this suit our audience really well, or is it something else, another approach? I'm quite excited about trying to do that, like trying to build out what does a great podcast website actually look like in 24, because it's probably changed a lot over the last 5 years. What are people looking for? And a lot of that might be talking to our audience here, or you listeners out there, like what do you want from a text version of these audio episodes or video episodes? So I'm quite excited about that actually.
Yeah, it'll be good to see. That's taken up most of my week, getting that stuff done.
Is blog the right term these days? We still use the word blogging because that was kind of what we grew up in. You're a lot younger than me, so maybe you have a different perspective on it. But is it a blog? Is that the right term for it these days?
I would call it a blog. It's as much a blog as the podcast host is a blog. I think.
What's the difference between a blog and a website?
A website. So I would say a website is more of a marketing tool. You've got maybe like a website, a blog, and then apps. A website might be, so like Alto has a website where we explain what the tool is, we explain how it works, all that kind of stuff. But then there's a blog, there's Create Toolbox, and that has sort of articles on it, and that's more around sort of teaching, I think. More around teaching, more around picking apart particular topics. When I worked in an agency, the differentiation was you'd have a brochure website, and a brochure website was essentially just that. It was a digital brochure. And we would do that for small businesses, we'd do that for property developments and all that kind of stuff. And then you would have a blog, and a blog can be part of a website. Yeah, that would be my differentiation. Yeah.
It's something around, it's by a person, isn't it? Specifically, like you go to any random website, which is about a topic or whatever. It might just be like a landing page, a sales thing that you're talking about. It's never necessarily, each page isn't necessarily by a particular person. My differentiation generally is a weblog. A blog is generally a person writing about something that they know well, or something inspirational, or something funny. It's from first person. It's like, I did this, I did that, or I think that's the difference. And that's why often they resonate well, because it's a real person that you can get to know and follow, and just a philosophy rather than a structure.
Yeah, I mean, a website is typically it's quite anonymous, I guess.
So getting into tools then, let's talk about how we did it then this time round. So that's the idea for this start of this episode at least. What was it you used to build it these days?
I had a look at a few different tools, and the one that I landed on was called Ghost. So Ghost is an open source CMS like WordPress, but the difference is that it is really, 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 really easy to write in. It's really opinionated. I think going to be quite a lot quicker to get up and running what we wanted without complexity. Like I really wanted to, I built the first version of it in a couple of days, and I probably could have done that with WordPress. But the thing is, as time goes on and you add more and more things, you slow down because there's more complexity, there's more plugins to manage, and there's more this and that and the other. So it's like WordPress, but much more focused, I think. The downside to that is that it's a lot less flexible unless you want to start writing code. But even then, there are some limitations. The thing about it is you've got a blog and a newsletter in one. So every blog post that you publish could potentially be an email. Kind of got this built-in membership system where people subscribe to your blog and then they'll receive those posts that you choose to send as emails. But right out of the box, you've got premium kind of membership side to it built in. In any given article, you could set up a block that is only for members. Anyone who visits the site can read most of the article apart from this block, which I found really, really interesting. I'm already kind of thinking of a few different ways to use that. That's probably not unique. Places like Beehives and Substacks of the world do something similar.
I've never seen it with individual little parts of the post. Like you'll often see like half of the post is gated. So you'll read a couple of pages and then suddenly it's to read the rest, sign up. I've never seen it whereby you can read a whole article, but you can take just one section. And one of your examples was around an AI prompt, for example, wasn't it? Let's say we'll teach you how to create video clipping with AI, but actually the prompt that we personally use, that we've developed over time, that one section is gated. But you can read the whole thing other than that. I don't think I've seen that anywhere else.
Really, really cool. Because it means you can get an entire article, but presumably Google's little robots can't read it either, therefore it's not going to get indexed. But you can have the benefit of getting indexed and ranking, plus having that sort of gating within the article, which is really, really cool.
Theoretically, Google can read past gates, which is, I always find a little bit weird, because there's tools out there, there's little, if you can simulate being a robot, or there's little kind of hacks you can put on the front of URLs to be able to get past content gates, some types of them, because it's the way that the browsers do, the crawlers do. So not exactly sure how how the tech works behind that. But being able to have them just purely open and just that one part's gated seems much more sensible. I mean, with all that built in then, how techy was it? Like, was it very easy to set up, or did you have to know a bit of tech stuff?
The whole thing can be done tech-free. I went with the not tech-free route because I wanted the flexibility. So we self-hosted it, that you can do with WordPress, and most people do. But for most people, there's a $5 a month subscription by Ghost themselves, and they just take care of everything. All you need to do is pick a theme and start writing. So in that sense, yeah, it can be a totally tech-free experience. There is one caveat, and something that I think that Ghosts need to make easier for most people, and that is setting up your blog routes. So say you wanted example.com / and then like a category, and it might be boats. Then you want every post in that boat category to exist on /boats/ then the post title. That stuff needs done in what's called a config file. It is code, but it's not very complicated code. You're just defining anything that has this tag, put it into this route, and that kind of stuff. That was not very user-friendly.
That's a weird thing to make tricky. Like, what? That's like such a basic thing of content creation, is figuring out your hierarchy and your categories and your slugs and all that kind of stuff.
I get the impression that Ghost was made first for developers and then made user-friendly, which is why the route that I went, which was a bit more techy, I was happy to write some code. In fact, I wanted that flexibility of changing the theme and all of that stuff. It was by far the nicest experience that I've ever had working on blog theme code. I mean, out of what have I used? WordPress, Drupal, probably some other bits and bobs of Drupal. I know, and in that a blast from the past. But it was really, really nice, really, really simple. So if you're into writing a little bit of code, it's a very good experience. But equally, if you don't want to, the only thing to be mindful of is the blog routes. And I was actually thinking I might write a little guide on that, because it's not that hard. It might look scary at first if you're not sure what this file is.
So that pro tier compares with, I suppose, WordPress.com, doesn't it? Like, WordPress has the same thing where you can have a hosted version. So there's a few comparisons there. Like, does it have plugins? Does it do the same kind of thing in terms of extensibility?
So I actually thought it did, and I was mistaken. It doesn't. What it does have is a set list of integrations that they've created. There are some useful things in there, but the most useful thing is it does hook up to Zapier. So there's no plugins that will extend Ghost's ability to do things. I looked into it a bunch because I was actually quite angry. I was like, why haven't you done this? But they're just so determined to stop it from becoming WordPress. And as useful as plugins are in WordPress, they do become cumbersome. They don't play well nice together. They slow the site down, all that. So I do understand the reasoning. But by being able to use Zapier, you do get a fair bit of extensibility. But yeah, you're not able to really change how Ghost works itself.
It's using external tools rather than internal, But absolutely. I mean, the more we used, our main site, the podcast host, still does run on WordPress, but the longer we've gone on, the more we have actually outsourced tools. Like even this week, we've been doing another little bit of optimization, taking out, we used to use Gravity Forms, which was a forms-based tool, a plugin. Technically, it is a separate service, but it worked really strongly through a plugin that went into WordPress. But we've taken that out because it actually had a little issue with it. It had some kind of vulnerability or something like that. And we realized we're only using it on 4 or 5 pages. And actually, we love Typeform. Typeform is a standalone, really good form-based tool that we can embed if we really want to, or we can just link out to a Typeform page. So
that's it.
Yeah, the more we've gone on, the more we've gone away from plugins anyway, really. Peter on our team, who's a WordPress guru, he basically builds a lot of stuff for WordPress ourselves rather than relying on other plugins too, doesn't he? So yeah, pros and cons too. I mean, I couldn't have done what we've done with this company though, if it wasn't for WordPress and plugins in the early days, because I had no capability to do that back then. All right, who is Ghost suited to then? Who should use Ghost compared to WordPress or anything else? Like, what is it ideally suited for?
Good question. The trouble is there's no middle ground. It's going to be good for someone who wants a blog, a newsletter, and the option to charge money for some level of premium content. Out of the box, they just want to pick a theme and be done with it. Perfect for those people. Absolutely perfect. If you're just purely ship fast mentality, really recommend it. But on the other side, if you are someone who quite explicitly does want to build kind of custom things in the theme and wants to be able to move quite quickly and building out their vision for a reading experience and all that kind of stuff, then it's perfect for those people. But if you want something in between, it's probably not going to be great for you. Like if you do want, and it comes down to the plugin thing, if you want to add little extra bits of functionality without writing codes, I would use WordPress because there's tens of thousands of plugins there that will satisfy you. But if you're really just determined to ship fast, publish the email, start a membership, then yeah, for me, it's a no-brainer. I've already started up a little personal site of my own with it, and I'm really enjoying it, and all I want for that site is somewhere that I can go and write, easily share it, pick up some newsletter subscribers, and that's it. That's all I care about. I don't want a think about anything else. And for me, in that case, it was perfect. And for us, for this blog, it was perfect as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've heard people talk about it as something you can graduate to Ghost almost once you've got a bit of a team. If you do have somebody that has some coding ability, you've got a coder you can work with, or even an outsourcer, contractor, whatever. I've heard of people leveling up to something like Ghost compared to WordPress. But then again, WordPress can do that too. If you've got a team, like we just said, we still do that with Peter. But the other, I suppose, I first heard about Ghost as a replacement for Substack. So it was exactly as you're describing there. Like it was a Substack, we're putting the prices up, changing around all their tiers, all that kind of stuff. And it was a few years back, and people were like, it first started to come out as it's too expensive, Substack. Look, there's this thing called Ghost, though. It does exactly the same thing. It's a website, it's email, it's list building, essentially. So just go over to that. So that was where I first heard it. So maybe that's the main thing for it just now. Like that was what I started thinking about when you wrote this down as a topic for today. It made me think back to a few months back. I was looking at all of the different blogging tools, and not even just blogging tools, but it goes so much more diverse now. Do you think of WordPress and Ghost, for example, as blogging tools, but like what else do you think of these days when you think of building a website?
Do you know, weirdly, not even a blogging post at all, but almost everyone has one of these, like a link tree. That's the most basic website that almost everyone has these days. And it's almost like your MySpace for now. It's your little space. It's got all your links to all your different things. But I think that maybe the lines are blurring a little bit between blog and email. And so I think things like Beehive and Substack come up a lot. Don't want something public. That's where they go.
First thing for me was both of them actually. Like Beehive I believe, I didn't see when they first came out, but I believe they started very much email first, but almost public email focused, as in your emails were always published to the website anyway. And it's just so integrated, isn't it? Like no one really runs a good blog these days without having email anyway, having them so heavily integrated. And so when I was looking into this recently, like it was just for a personal project too, it was Beehive I went with in the end because you can publish so easily, so quickly. Substack was a really close alternative. And the real kind of the benefit for them, for me, beyond Ghost and WordPress was actually the growth network more than anything else. So you could do pretty much all you want to do with a blog, as in you can publish stuff online, you can then send out an email to people, you can offer subscriptions, blah, blah, blah. But then again, you do that. How do people actually find your Ghost blog or your WordPress blog? You have to do a lot of marketing in some way. Yeah. But actually Beehive and Substack both have pretty heavy growth tools built into them in the form of, with Substack and Beehive, they both have the referral system. So you'll have seen it, Jacob, like when you sign up for a Substack newsletter, what happens after you hit subscribe?
You're getting recommended other similar publications. It's got that discoverability built in, which you don't get with like your own kind of locked off blog, your own thing. Being part of a network of other blogs. It's like Medium actually, and LinkedIn are really good for that. LinkedIn's got blog posts on it now. I think you've got a newsletter on there technically.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's really valuable having that discoverability built in, because it's a major thing for most people starting a blog is how am I actually going to get people to read it?
Let's come back to LinkedIn in a minute. That's a really good point actually. But just to finish off on them, like Beehive has gone beyond, I think, that referral, and they've built in as well paid advertising and more partner type relationships, and that's their big thing. There's no point in publishing if no one's going to see it. So we're going to build a decent publishing platform. It's not going to be as customizable, or it's quite limited compared to a WordPress site and probably compared to Ghost as well. But you can publish content on the web, and their thing is they'll help you grow it, essentially. That seems to be my read on their focus. And that makes so much sense, actually.
Have you tried any of those features on that personal project?
So what I've tried so far in that realm is ConvertKit's referral system. So they're tricky. Like ConvertKit's one is in the form that you essentially have to do all the legwork yourself. So you have to reach out to other creators. You have to find out who's on ConvertKit first. Then you have to reach out to them, and then you have to make an agreement around, for promoting my newsletter, I'll promote yours if you do, or I'll pay you or whatever. But it's all done manually, and then that creator has to manually add you as a recommendation to their account. So there's no facilitation, there's no networking, there's no kind of automation around that, which I think is a real big miss. And I'm sure ConvertKit's thinking about that because they're a fast-moving team and everything. But it seems to me like Substack and Beehive. In fact, I think Substack might actually be similar to ConvertKit in that sense, but Beehive's making it much more systematized, productized.
Yeah, they're leading the way for sure in that kind of stuff. Everyone talking about them makes it look that way. Not tried it personally.
But that's a really interesting point on LinkedIn. Like social. I mean, you could call it, Twitter was like microblogging originally, wasn't it? What's the downsides of that is primarily not owning it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really? Is that a total turn off for using LinkedIn as a blog?
Well, it depends what you're wanting to do. If you're wanting to build an audience, or I guess it's kind of the same thing in both. The advantage of LinkedIn is you've probably already got a network there. So any content that you post there is going to get more eyeballs straight away. And there's nothing to say that you couldn't do a bit of both. How is that working for you? Because I think we're actually just repurposing our pointers
I mean,
newsletter onto
newsletter, yep.
LinkedIn.
Yep.
How
That's
is
right.
that doing?
I mean, it's up to 700 subscribers. So it's a
Fantastic.
small fraction compared to our main list. Our main list is about 25,000. It's like 700 people that are actually using LinkedIn pretty
Right.
extensively. They've opted in on there. It works well.
Have you found that that's increased the engagement of your regular posts on LinkedIn? Because that's the thing that really attracts me, really.
I don't know. I've not correlated that for sure.
No.
Yeah. If you keep up regularly, it's got to help because
Mhm.
one of the cool things that facilitates comments. That's one thing that is a struggle on a traditional blog is that collaboration, the communication, the community side of things, because it's just spammed so badly. Like
Yeah.
we've switched off comments a long time ago on the podcast host because it's just pure spam. You occasionally get a good proper comment, but rarely. And really where people are putting those comments are on social. So if you're blogging on LinkedIn, it starts conversation. And if you're putting your newsletter on LinkedIn, those conversations happen there too. And no doubt that then increases your visibility with those people in future. As soon as they post a comment, you're suddenly kind of ranked up in their algorithm, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, and then their followers as well. That's a good thing about
Absolutely.
LinkedIn is it's quite
Really?
direct in that way. Because I mean, you often think how many times you're scrolling through your news feed and you just see someone that you're connected with, but they've commented on a post or they've liked a post. So you're getting visibility that way, which is cool.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people are using LinkedIn to repurpose stuff like that, aren't they? Like you'll create carousels were quite in for a while. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
they still are or not. You take a blog post and you create like a 10 sort of slideshow out of it, stick it on LinkedIn and then link to the blog post, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I've not seen a lot of people using it as their primary platform, but I think you're absolutely right. Like a lot of people, and me, I'm included in this. I have a real thing about wanting to own the platform. That's one of my struggles with social media in general is the risk that it goes the way of something like Twitter, for example, which has just changed entirely over the last few years. You can spend so much time building an audience and then it can really change and it's all kind of wasted. Or even worse than that, it's like, remember Meerkat?
No.
Meerkat was one of the live broadcasting type platforms. So you go on there and you just go live, audio only. It was kind of Clubhouse, but earlier. Early days Clubhouse. And not just that. Well, Clubhouse is another one. Just dies. Like Meerkat literally disappeared. Clubhouse, I don't even know if it exists anymore. So you can spend so much time, but they can disappear.
It's the trouble of trying to get enough people onto that platform to make it work. Because what we want about Twitter, Spaces actually has stuck around quite well on Twitter, which is that audio only live thing. It's because people are already there. There are already topics that they might want to start a space about. The same applies to, I think LinkedIn are trialing it as well. It's just the difficulty of getting people onto another place. And I think just to link back slightly to your point about comments, it's the same thing. It's so much effort to like give your email address or sign up to put a comment. Whereas if you're already on social media, you're already linked in. There's the fact that there's other people there that are going to see it. People are wanting to grow their thing, grow their profile, so they've got an incentive to engage with things. And it's tough to balance the wanting to own it and have it be yours and not have that risk versus the place where the conversations are happening probably has the most juice to grow your own thing.
They're in that mood. You're in a social mood, so you're more likely to comment, I think, when you're there. There's something around a threshold whereby you can't deny it's worth it, I should say. Like YouTube, there's no one publishing their own video elsewhere on their own platform, are they?
No.
That is the platform to do it. There's no question that is where you should be publishing video.
There's things that have spun off and seem to do well, like Linus Tech Tips. They wanted to start one of their own. That didn't work out very well. But there's others that are like group of history YouTubers that I watch. And I think they might call it Nebula. I think that might be one of the platforms. So they spun this off. They were YouTubers. That's where they built their audience. But then they went off and built this thing, started this company, and it seems to be doing really well. You can build an audience and you can hone your craft on someone else's platform. And then that sets you up later to build out your own thing somewhere else as well.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. The algorithm, I suppose, is where it's at, though, isn't it? It's just the discoverability side of things like LinkedIn, YouTube, if you want to be found in the first place. I mean, I think there is a lot to be said for the repurposing side. Like if you are going to publish blogs on YouTube, on LinkedIn, for example, no reason not to publish them on your own site as well.
We were just talking about Google at the start of this episode. How has your view changed on the benefit of owning your own thing when we're still kind of beholden to someone's algorithm? How does that balance out?
I think we always will be. I think that's the trouble.
Yeah.
So that's the whole part of my thinking right now is just making a much bigger effort to diversify, to have more than one channel and have no one channel sending us more than like 60, 70% of our traffic. Like cut it down so that you don't rely on anything for more than 50% of your traffic or your income or your inbound or whatever, you know. But we're always going to rely on somebody's, as in if we change that, we're going to be like YouTube is one of the great alternatives, but then they could change their algorithm. LinkedIn, again, might be another one. There's always got to be channels out there. And then you're trying to turn it into, I suppose, what we're talking about earlier, which is email subscribers, which is a real way that you can actually own the customer relationship, because you can then push out to them, not expect them to come and find you every day, but you can push content out to them as well. So it's really tricky, but absolutely. I think I've probably softened on it a little bit. But no, do you know what? I haven't, because I still think you do need to own your own platform, but actually it does need to go hand in hand with the other stuff a lot more strongly, for sure.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but everything else should be directing back to your home base, really. You still got your mothership, which is your own platform, and all the rest of it is hopefully promoting that at the end of the day and getting people onto your email list. But then at some point, maybe email will literally die. People keep claiming email's dead. It never has so far. I think it's still going as strong as ever. Maybe spam, maybe overwhelm, all that kind of stuff will just kill it well and truly at some point. We need something different.
That's why you need a podcast.
Yes.
That is actually a brilliant case for a podcast. It doesn't get much more independent than that. With email, you can be drowned in other people's spam that people didn't ask for. But with a podcast, they're making that conscious choice. This is what they're subscribing to. This is what they're looking out to. That's why we love podcasts.
Then popping up, in their feed, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, for sure. Do you know, last one I mentioned was something cool I came across when I was looking into it. And my big requirement really was with this new project, I wanted something that was actually, ironically, given how much I've just slightly slagged off social, I wanted it much more social-ish or social in form, as in it could be much more micro bites, could be much more, I could just write like 100 words. So the concept, it's one I've talked about a while ago. I think I mentioned it on an earlier episode around being able to just log the good things in life. So if I go for a great walk, I'll log that. If I have a great coffee, I'll log that. And it's designed for people like me, like probably men in their late 40s who are into similar kind of stuff to me, and recommending things that you can do to make the most of your time, because life feels overwhelming when you're at this stage in life. And so I wanted it so that I could literally just do that out in the road. Like I go to a cafe, I find a really cool cafe in this place, and I want to be able to log that so people can find it and get that recommendation. It was something that I wanted to really be able to do from my phone, but to be able to put pictures in, to be able to maybe even record a little audio clip. So it needed to be bigger than social, but still very easy and mobile and work, even if it's only 100 words, something like that. That was why I think Beehive really fits that in many ways, because it's simple. It does include all of those mediums, and it includes the email side as well. And it's why something like WordPress and Ghost and things probably don't really suit, because actually the formatting of those sites just is so much more suited to longer form. And I've experimented with that a bit over the time. But sorry, long way to say. Another really random one I found was one called Bearblog. So BEAR blog.dev. It's the most stripped down blogging platform you can ever find. Even its homepage, if you load up the homepage, if you're out there listening, load up that homepage just now and you'll see that the graphics are all ASCII pictures, you know, that kind of old school ASCII pictures made out of characters.
An
stuff
actual
like
little
that.
bear.
Yeah, exactly. A bear made out of characters. You can put images into the posts, but there's no real formatting. So it's really just plain text and images if you want to. And I actually really loved the concept and the way it was all put together. And I thought there's definitely little projects that I've had that would really suit this approach. Love the fact it's so small, tiny little pages. So it's just super fast, it just loads straight away. There's no trackers, ads in like that. Like it's all kind of really minimalist. And there's a few themes, but very, very minimalist as well. It's really cool. I like it a lot. You can own it. You can connect your own custom domain, that kind of stuff. And there's no worries about devices and stuff like that, like whether it's mobile optimized, all that kind of caper, because it's literally just simple images and text. I could see myself using that in future.
I will say, in Ghost Defense, if you want something with a little bit more fidelity, they do have really good themes for short form stuff as well. One that's basically a rip of Seth Godin's blog, which is the most famous short form blog in the world.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, cool. Okay, we'll keep that in mind. But yeah, check out Bearblog as well. I've got nothing to do with it. No affiliation here. I just really like the style and the ethos behind it.
I love how simple it is. That is cool. I'm going to do something.
Or we should say as well, yeah, totally. Should say we do have an affiliate link for Ghost actually. So if you enjoy this episode and you go and try out Ghost and you end up paying for the service, I'd love it if you use our affiliate link. So you can visit Ghost via thepodcasthost.com/ghost. That's GOHOST for the spelling impaired. Thepodcasthost.com/ghost.
Nice.
Thank you very much for that. All right, I think that's it for me this weekend. Anything else you want to cover?
Yeah, no, I think that was so good and focused. It's unlike us.
Oh. To a theme.
But not
Excellent.
unlike us to be good. Unlike us to be so focused to a theme.
well, thank you. Cool. All right. Thank you out there for listening. If you do want to support our free content that we put out, I'd love it if you check out our product as well, which is called Alitu. Alitu is the podcast maker app that we designed 6 or 7 years ago based on making podcasts our own way and with our own bare hands. And it's designed to make it really easy to edit, really easy to publish. It's got call recording and editing built in as well. All of that kind of stuff. What are you laughing at? My ad's gone off all over the place here, isn't it?
No, just because we've been talking about bear plug, our own bare hands, I just imagined two big bear mittens. Sorry, keep going.
Nice fun. No, you're right. I was going all over the place there. Anyway, Alitu, alitu.com, alitu.com. Makes podcasting easy. That'll do. Thanks very much. All right. Cheers. Thanks again for listening. We'll talk to you next time.